The silk whispered against my skin like a secret I had kept my whole life. I never planned to become her, never imagined that one ordinary Monday would split my existence in two. But standing here now, feeling the delicate fabric embrace me like a lover's first touch, I understand that Marcus was always just a mask, a role I played badly for 23 years. It started so innocently. A lazy Monday, wandering the mall alone as usual. I worked Tuesday through Saturday and spent my free days drifting through crowds of strangers. I had no real friends. My coworkers were just names attached to faces. Not one of them would cross the street for me, let alone take a bullet. What I possessed was a collection of casual acquaintances and an aching emptiness I could never name. As I cruised past the storefronts, my feet slowed on their own. They always did. Right there, Victoria's Secret. I stopped to admire the display, pulse quickening the way it always did. Lace and satin arranged like forbidden fruit behind the glass. My reflection stared back at me, hungry and hesitant. I stood there burning with a desperate wish. Just once I wanted the courage to walk through those doors. Even pretending to shop for a girlfriend would be something. The lingerie shops were always my favorites. A guy likes to see his girl in sexy lingerie, right? That was my excuse. The lie I whispered to myself every single time. Suddenly, hunger hit me, and I headed down to the food court. I chose a table out in the middle, away from most of the people, and sat there slowly sipping my Diet Pepsi while taking tiny, thoughtful bites of my taco. Ashley, one of my coworkers I frequently went to lunch with, always said I ate like a girl. What was with that? She claimed I sat like one too, the nerve. Still, we liked each other as friends, and it was not like I had many of those. So, if she wanted to insult me, let her. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a very attractive green-eyed redhead standing across the table from me. She asked if she could share my table. I was deep in thought, but not wanting to be rude, I said of course. It only occurred to me much later that she could have chosen from a dozen other tables where no one was seated. She sat down, and I noticed that while she was dressed rather casually in cranberry-colored slacks and a white sweater, she wore a striking emerald pendant in an antique setting around her neck. We struck up the usual chit-chat, but all the while I could not take my eyes off that pendant. No, it was not because it was nestled between two delectable mounds. Mind you, I enjoyed seeing a ripe bosom on a girl, but that was not my focus at the moment. She noticed my admiration and asked if I knew much about emeralds. I said no, but I had always thought they were beautiful and would like to know more. She offered to let me take a closer look and removed it from around her neck. She asked my name, and I told her Marcus Taylor. She said hers was Catherine. She did not actually hand me the pendant. Instead, she held it loosely in her palm, allowing it to swing gently back and forth, twirling and catching the light in every facet. I could not take my eyes off it. She began to explain about the characteristics of emeralds, and then I could hear only her voice. The background noise of the mall faded completely away. There was just her sweet voice explaining about emeralds. That was the last thing I remembered until I met her back there 3 hours later. Maybe I should clarify. It was the last thing Marcus remembered. When I left the food court running on autopilot, my first stop was Fantastic Sam's. Rebecca at the front desk said Laura would be ready for me in a few minutes, and to have a seat. I sat down between a blonde housewife type and an attractive brunette who looked like she could easily sell her charms for cash. Laura came and collected me. She gave me a wash, cut, set, and a body perm with long side-swept bangs. She said Catherine had told her what I wanted, so I just let her do her thing. I have no idea why that seemed perfectly all right to me. She washed my long locks, towel-dried them, then cut and rolled my hair onto medium curlers with a strong setting gel. I sat under the dryer for about half an hour, idly reading Cosmo. You can learn a lot about women from reading their magazines. I suppose you can learn even more by being treated like one. I had not realized how much. Her thing included piercing both my ears. Pop, pop. She put in cubic zirconia studs, and I told her I wanted the green ones, of course. Emeralds were on my mind. She combed me out into a soft wave with some backcombing for volume, then handed me a mirror so I could approve. Which I did. I knew I had thick hair, but this looked like twice as much as before, and the bangs swept nicely to the left suited me. She put the part on the right, and it was quite pretty. Strange, but I did not remember having bangs before. How odd. It was terribly feminine, but I loved it. I went up front and paid. Rebecca smiled and said, "Thank you, Maya. See you again." I left for my next stop. Maya? I did not remember telling her my name at all. Nobody called me Maya. I noticed how it was spelled in her appointment book. Maya, like a nickname for Miranda. A natural mistake, I guessed. Oh well, with a pretty hairdo like this, why would she not think that? I found myself once again at Victoria's Secret. Only this time, my feet were actually carrying me through the entrance. This was something I had always wanted, but had been too chicken to do. Yet now I strolled in like any other shopper, completely unabashed. It was as though my new hairdo had given my feet courage. I was running on autopilot. Actually, I was. A salesgirl approached and asked how she could help me. I told her I would like to see a bustier in a size 34B, with garters if possible. They did have them with detachable garters. She said they were over in the corner and showed me the selection. I chose a rose-colored one that rather matched the cable knit sweater I was wearing. She tilted her head and asked, "Would you like to try it on, miss?" With a flip of my hair, I replied, "Yes, of course. After all, you do not buy clothing without trying it on. What girl in her right mind would purchase a foundation garment without trying it on first?" Now where did the nerve for that come from? And why had she called me miss? And why was I trying on such a garment? I was a guy, was I not? Well, I was. It must be the hair and the earrings, I told myself. That was it. Or maybe it was my voice. I sounded different to myself, kind of lyrical. The bustier had push-up pads inside. It squeezed my waist down a couple of inches and made me look like I had a real bosom. It accentuated my hips and backside beautifully. I managed to put it on, then pulled my sweater down over it and walked out of the fitting booth to admire myself in one of the big mirrors. "You will be wearing it then, miss?" the girl asked. "Yes, I like it," I heard myself say in what I now recognized as feminine intonations. I ignored the miss completely. Then I wandered over to the silk naughty nighties and picked out one in emerald green, of course. It had lace at the bodice and spaghetti straps. Very slinky. I got excited just passing the cloth through my fingers. It felt like quicksilver running over my hands as I drew it from one to the other, savoring the wonderful texture. I chose a medium size, just knowing somehow that it would fit deliciously. On the rack right beside them hung some regular cut spandex panties. I picked 3 pairs and 2 garter belts. The salesgirl asked if I needed any stockings. I said, "Show me what you have." I chose 3 packages. They were on sale, 3 for $10, and had lovely lace tops about 3 inches deep. Very sexy. I loved sexy lingerie. I went back into the booth and proceeded to put on a pair of the stockings, gartering them to the bustier. Then I replaced my briefs with a pair of the panties, which pulled up very smoothly. I looked surprisingly feminine in my crotch, a fact that did not seem to bother me or cause any concern at all. I tossed the briefs into the bag for later disposal. I felt certain I was never going to wear such trashy cotton things again. I was wearing a pair of rather flimsy light tennis shoes without socks, like deck shoes, the kind some girls wear. But now I was wearing hose with them. After retying them, I paid and left. "Another thank you, miss." It felt so grand to be able to go in there and just buy whatever I wanted and to try it on. Shopping always made me feel better. Do not ask me why. My next stop was Merle Norman. It was like I had a special and specific list I had to follow. Had I been an android on a mission, my purpose could not have been more clear. I must go to Merle Norman. I was again mistaken for a girl. When I went in, I simply asked to see some colognes. The salesgirl was very persuasive, and I ended up accepting a complete makeover. She handed me the mirror, and I almost fell off the stool. I had expected her to perhaps trim my eyebrows and shade out a blemish or two. Instead, I was almost gorgeous. I must have looked like a fool staring at myself that way. I could not believe the change and how good it made me feel. My skin was flawless and accentuated with all the right colors, including that creamy lipstick. That girl knew her makeup. I looked good. I looked foxy. Next, she gave me a manicure, layering 2 coats of quick-dry mocha enamel on my slightly long nails, now rounded and slightly pointed. I still had a grip on the idea that I was really a male. Maybe, somewhere. But I was no longer any part of a man, and fading fast. Very fast. She did not have a clue, and the girl she was working her magic on had never felt more elated in her life. The girl? I was thinking of myself in the feminine gender and third person. What was wrong with me? But I was positively radiant. I absolutely glowed. I had never seen myself with beautiful eye makeup, a peaches and cream complexion, blusher, lipstick, and pretty polished nails. With the hair and earrings, the effect was totally girl. I was stunned. A shiver ran all through me when I saw myself, and just then I felt something snap. It was not as though I had heard a bone pop, but more like a subtle shift into second gear. You know, like when your automatic transmission shifts up one notch? Just going into Victoria's Secret and putting on the bustier and stockings and panties had not done it, even after the decidedly feminine cut, perm, and earrings. But seeing that face along with the hair and figure made it all come together. It was as though I had tripped a mousetrap, a trigger that set me off. It could not have been more real if I had stepped on a landmine and suddenly armed it, realizing my next step would be my last. I was so excited I could not even remember my name. Miranda? Maya? Yes, that was it. That was the name I gave her for the invoice. Maya Hayes. Miranda Hayes. Sure, that was who I was. I paid the girl, thanked her for her excellent work, and went on to my next stop carrying my bag of cosmetics. About $80 worth, but I felt they were worth every penny. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew my next stop was an appointment to keep with a girl named Catherine. I was almost late, so I rushed back to the food court. I trotted, actually, arms held high and backside swaying as I took what were decidedly girlish little strides. There she was. I sat down with her, carefully placing my package on the table and seating myself with both feet and knees together like always. I crossed my legs at the knee and folded my hands in my lap, smiling at her. She was lavish in her compliments on what a little shopping could do for a girl's spirit. That pronoun just went right by me, like it belonged there all my life. Her eyes danced quickly over my face, hair, pierced ears, and sweater. She complimented me on the haircut and my new emerald studs, mentioning the makeup in glowing terms. I thought that was the best part. I just loved the creamy taste and feel of the lipstick. She complimented me on the use of my hands. That seemed a peculiar compliment for one girl to give another, but I was euphoric. Then she suggested we go down to Dillard's and look at a few things. As we were walking, she whispered something in my ear. I do not even remember what she said. I was eager to be keeping company with such an attractive girl. We went to Dillard's shoe department. I found a pair of stacked heel Mary Janes in a cream color that looked really cute with the slacks I had on. I also picked out a pair of black flats, a sexy pair of red spiked strappy sandals with about a 3.5-inch heel, and a pair of mid-heeled mules to wear with my new nightie. I could not wait to see the sandals with an evening dress. I remembered seeing one in a window just up the mall that would be perfect if I could afford it. Well, maybe in another payday or two. Dillard's had evening dresses too. I decided to look while we were there. What did Catherine whisper to me? No matter. The sales girl asked me what size I wore. I told her she would have to measure as I had lost some weight lately. She did, bringing out all 4 pairs in size 8. They fit perfectly. They were all leather uppers and felt comfortable immediately. I was right about those sandals. They were so sexy. But I really needed to paint my toenails when I got home. I did have some polish from Merle Norman, so I filed that away as something I had to do tonight, along with giving myself a clear coat of hardener for the office. The girl asked if I would like some knee-highs and a purse to go with the Mary Janes. I already had my stockings on, but I did buy the purse. I put the makeup inside and wore the Mary Janes out of the department. They had about a 2.5-inch heel, but felt just fine and natural. We stopped by the cosmetics counter, and I got that clear hardener. Then, Catherine and I went over to the women's slacks department. I got 2 more appropriate pairs that would fit me better with my now smaller waist. They were man-tailored and very chic, one in black light wool and one in tan gabardine. Again, something I could wear to the office. Why was I thinking about wearing women's clothing to the office? Oh, that was right. My name was Maya. I was a woman. I talked Catherine into looking at evening wear for a moment. Well, darlings, I found my dream dress to go with the shoes and simply had to try it on. It was a little strapless number, with the bodice layered in organza. It clung to every curve I owned. The skirt was slit to just above the left knee. Catherine said I was about a 10 for that dress. I came out of that fitting booth with the dress and the sandals on. I looked in the mirror and thought I could now die happy. I put it on layaway, and we moved on. With that bustier on, I had a very feminine figure, and filled out the slacks nicely too. No unsightly bulges, thanks to the spandex top on my pantyhose and spandex briefs. Since Catherine's whisper, I was a girl. I just smoothed what little I had down and back, not consciously realizing what it was I was doing. I could not understand why, but on one level, way back in my head as before, I knew that I was male. Sort of. I should be freaking out by now at all the things I had just done. But at the moment, I was the picture of calm. Not a guy, at least not in my mind, and certainly not to anyone who saw me. My sex may have been male. That was still up for debate. But my gender was girl. All girl. I was just out with another girlfriend doing some shopping. Yes, I was a girl. That was what she had whispered to me. Poof! With a whisper, Marcus was gone. But who was I now? And would that male person try to force his way back into my now idyllic life? I certainly hoped not. Maya? So there I was, looking every bit like Catherine's new girlfriend. I guessed that was exactly what I had become. The good witch had waved her magic wand, and I had become a princess. I really did like her, and just knew we were going to be good friends for a long time to come. She had a sweet way about her and a hypnotic personality, which I supposed was an understatement. We went back to the food court for another Diet Pepsi. Then she said, "All right, Maya," spelled Gerri. "It is okay to be yourself now for a little while." Suddenly I woke up. Well, it was not like I really woke up from sleep. More of a becoming aware suddenly of my new circumstances. I did not remember coming back to the food court. I did remember my name. It was Maya, short for Miranda. And then it all came rushing at me. What I had done, where I had been, what I looked like, the makeover and the nails, the whisper and the stunning evening dress I had just bought to wear with my new sexy sandals. I blushed right through my makeup. I just looked into those deep green eyes of hers for a minute. I got lost in them and began to tear up a little. I was tongue-tied, speechless, overwhelmed with sheer panic and then sheer joy, all the emotions rolling across my face, and just as suddenly, a warm glow came over me. I said, "Thank you so much, Catherine," as I reached out my hand with the perfectly polished nails and tenderly placed it over her own. "It has been a wonderful afternoon, and I really appreciate what you have taught me about emeralds and about being myself." Even the voice I heard was that of a girl. I could not pass for a Marcus if my life depended on it, and I really did not care. "So now you know what you have been doing, right?" "Yes." "And who the world thinks you are now?" "Yes." I am finally the real me. And are you all right? I mean, with what has happened? You know I am, I said emphatically. Well, Maya, I think you had better think of a more appropriate name for me to call you right now before you go home. I do not want to see Marcus with a J anymore, and Maya with a G sounds just too much the same. How about Victoria? I said without hesitation. I love it. Victoria. And Victoria you shall be. With that, I could not remember my boy name or Maya at all. I was Victoria Hayes. Here is my phone number, she said. Call me and maybe we can take in a movie next week. I said I would. I went home singing along with the radio in my best alto. Later that night, after my soak in bath oil and extensive shaving that I felt compelled to do, I laundered the new panties and stockings I had worn. I did my nails over in clear and put mocha on my toenails. I put on a fresh pair of hose and got dressed again, only this time with the new slacks and the red spiked strappy sandals and a silk shirt that looked somewhat feminine. I was standing there marveling at myself in the full-length mirror when there was a knock at the door. I should have been scared out of my wits, but I just calmly went to answer it. I suspected Catherine had something to do with this too. I was still Victoria, after all, in charge of my mind and body. It did not matter who was at the door. I was sure of who I was and the image I presented. It was Ashley, of all people. It was not the first time she had been over. We were friends, after all. She said, Victoria, you look stunning, and asked to come in. Of course I said yes. I offered her some tea, and we talked and talked. I should have been embarrassed by my appearance, but was not in the least. Noticing the lipstick marks on my cup, I got out my new lipstick and freshened it up a little. I asked her if she knew Catherine. Before she had a chance to answer, the light dawned like a clap of thunder. Ashley knew my name was Victoria. How? She admitted that she had put Catherine up to the whole thing. She had sensed something in my eyes or my manner. I do not know what exactly. And being the little imp I knew her as at work, I was not surprised. She said, Remember, I told you that you eat and sit like a girl. That is what made me suspicious of you in the first place. You conduct yourself just like a girl when you are at the table. Mannerisms, chewing, drinking, everything. It made me wonder if there really was a girl underneath that boyish exterior. I thought you would make a lovely girl. In fact, you do. I had never realized that a part of my feminine side had become second nature or so obvious to anyone else, I told her. I admitted to Ashley that I had been fascinated with women's everything since I was a teenager, but never had the nerve to do anything about it. I was jealous when my girlfriend started her periods and her bosom began to grow. I thanked Ashley for interfering. Then she asked if I would mind taking off the slacks and blouse. It was just like I was with Catherine. I was nonplussed and did as she asked, modeling my new undies and my sexy new sandals. She was a little more gracious than I deserved, I thought, but I accepted her approval. She never even mentioned the tiny bulge in my panties. She asked me if I had bought any skirts, blouses, or dresses. I said no. Well then, let us do a little shopping this Saturday after you get off work. You have just got to have some pretty skirts and dresses if you are going to be even a part-time girl, Victoria. What could I say? I just loved shopping. I agreed to the trip, of course, since it was a dream come true. At least, that was why I thought I said yes. Ashley showed up Saturday with Catherine in tow. Catherine, it seemed, was a licensed psychiatrist, an old friend of Ashley's from school. She had a little kit with her and told me to drop my panties and bend over. I thought this a rather unusual request, but could not seem to resist anything Catherine wanted me to do. She popped 2 hypos into my rump and told me she would be doing that every week for some time to come. We 3 girls had quite a time. Catherine had programmed me to absorb all of what I learned about makeup and hair and clothes, so I was to find out. That was all we talked about the whole time we were out anyway. My feminine self was automatically triggered if a girl said the words "a little shopping" to me as an invitation. How sneaky! Those were the words Ashley had used. I just had to know, so I asked. They think I'm gay down at work, do they not? Yes. Are you? Well, not that I know of up to this point. I have never thought of being with a man as a man, if that is what you mean. I thanked them for their honesty. Did you ever fantasize about being a girl with a man? I never thought it was possible until now, so the idea never entered my mind. I could see them filing that away. We had dinner at a nearby restaurant and then went home. A young man held the restaurant door open for me. How nice, I thought, to be treated like a lady. I wondered what Ashley and Catherine had in store for me next. I felt like I was in Svengali's power with no will of my own, but I just loved what was happening. Since I could not be held responsible, I could just sit back and enjoy the ride. They both said that Victoria passed very well and would likely never be found out unless I got arrested or went too far with a man. A man? I think not. Well, that was what I said now. I could see things had a way of taking a turn, so I had better just reserve my opinions about men for later. Catherine had a rather powerful influence on me. I was a little afraid she could pretty much send me in any direction she wanted that fit in with my girlish charms. Despite this little fear, I trusted that she would not make me do anything contrary to my nature, whatever that really was. The trouble was, I had never been with a girl either as a male. I was a virgin, more is the pity. That night, I slid into my slinky new emerald nightie and drifted off into a wonderful dream. A dream I had not let myself have in a long, long time. A dream that started at age 12 with me growing up differently. All right, a girl. There. I had finally said it, even if only in a dream. Now I knew what my nature really was. I wanted a lovely bosom and a shapely bottom. I wanted men falling all over themselves over me. Marcus was the phony, and Victoria was real. This was a little scary. The following week, we all went shopping again after my shots. This time, I got some slips, a camisole, a couple of teddies, and a pair of decidedly feminine loafers, with a ghillie tie at the vamp for work. It had been getting a little chilly lately, and I just could not seem to resist wearing my gartered stockings and a teddy to the office. I just knew the garters showed through my man-tailored ladies' slacks when I sat down in the lunchroom. At least I wore nylon socks with my sandals and penny loafers. But they thought I was gay anyway, so what did I care? They treated me okay. Ashley ran her hand along my thigh one day under the table, felt my garters, and just smiled. I only wore really tiny studs to work. Well, most of the time. Once in a while, I wore the bigger ones. I had been having the urge lately to wear my small gold hoops. Now that my ears had healed, I had even gotten some pretty dangles. I was letting my hair grow long enough for at least a page boy. Yes. Monday, the gold hoops. Would I have the nerve to wear the dangles to work? Maybe. Even Jackson wore dangles, and he did it on television, but he was so macho. And I was so Alice in Wonderland. I wondered how far Madison, my boss, would let me go with this. I had a feeling I was going to find out somewhere down the road. Since I was not required to wear a tie, I had been wearing white blouses to work. I had also worn my feminine loafers several times now. The men did not know the difference, but the other girls knew. They also knew which side those buttons should be on. The other girls. That was dangerous thinking, Victoria. I felt so deliciously female lately. I was getting entirely too bold. Actually, I did not have a stitch of masculine clothing or jewelry on at work or at home anymore. I even bought a feminine wristwatch and wore it all the time. And remember to answer to Marcus when you're at work, for heaven's sake, I thought to myself. I was going to have to be more careful about Catherine. I thought she was having me live out my fantasies to their logical conclusions. If that was true, they were going to be seeing bra straps under my blouses as well, because I would need one. I wondered how she was going to finesse getting me to grow breasts. Maybe that was what the shots were about. No telling. But between devilish little Ashley and her, I was on pins and needles to see how they did it. Not if, but how and when. It really would be nice not to have to use the push-up pads in my bra or bustier. Or be able to wear a nice underwire bra. I thought breasts were such a turn-on. Madison, just when were you going to drop the hammer? With as far as they had brought me, it was just the next logical step. I just knew they were plotting to make that old dream come true. So maybe I had better go to dancing class and learn to follow. Yes, I would enroll as Victoria and learn to dance as soon as they would take me. I thought I had better wear flats to class at first. After I learned, then I could wear my new snakeskin spikes. Oh yes, my wardrobe kept expanding. Exponentially, as they say. Marcus was being forced into more than one corner. I now had two more pairs of plain vamped opera pumps, one black, and the snakeskin. I was becoming a little bolder. I started actually wearing my flats with my pants, even the red ones. I had them in 4 colors now. A few of the men had become less hostile but more observant. I thought they were beginning to get the picture. The picture appeared to be shifting along with my fat deposits. I swore I was growing lovely, sensitive little breasts. My bottom seemed to be covering more chair, too. And Ashley, bless her devious little heart, had apparently spread the word about the name I used when not at work. She told me she had seen to it that they no longer thought I was gay or a queen. I would be fascinated, I was sure, to know what she told them. I would bet it was a wild story, knowing her gift for stretching the truth. Yesterday, 2 of them came right out and called me Victoria, out in the office, when we were discussing an account. I blushed 6 shades the first few times that happened. But it was spreading, and if they accepted it, why should I not? Even 2 of the men had started calling me Victoria in a respectful way. I stood amazed. Natalie told me, "Honey, if you have the nerve to wear flats, why not some mid-heeled pumps with your slacks and some makeup?" This Friday, as she was passing out the paychecks, even Madison called me Victoria, although my paycheck still said Marcus. I did not know if it was a dig or a sign of acceptance. By now, I was sure she had heard all the gossip and been clued in by Ashley, too. Catherine had been religious about my shots. I was getting very milky, soft skin now, and my fat was nestling rather nicely into my bras and panties. I jiggled. Ashley said I needed to work on my walk. I had always gone to particular lengths to walk like I saw other men walk, with a long stride and freely swinging arms. Well, I soon discovered I could not take such long strides anyway when I began wearing my Mary Janes with the slacks. But she said I needed to keep my upper body more quiet, let the hips loose, and swing the arms from the elbow. I knew girls learned to walk like girls, loose and smooth with a little wiggle. There was nothing genetic about the way a girl walked, except she was working from a wider pelvis. Just loosen up, girl, that was all. I thought, all right, Victoria, you can do this. Practice at home and everywhere you go, until it just comes naturally. Wear at least stacked heels all the time for a while until you get it. The next time I saw Catherine, I asked her to program me to walk more like a girl. She was happy to comply after giving me my shots. And it made it so much easier to walk in high heels when walking from the hips, nice and loose. The girls at work noticed right away, and were very approving now that they had an idea where I was coming from. But where was I coming from? I still felt more like an observer in all of this, rather than the observee. A few of the men saw this new walk as flaunting my swish, and were obvious in their distaste. But now there was not much I could do except be myself. Victoria. Catherine had me walking like a model down a runway, and that was just too much. I asked her to tone me down a notch, and she did. That runway walk was really flaunting it, So I began wearing my Mary Janes and other higher stacked heels with my slacks, and even at home with my jeans. It really worked. Raised some male eyebrows, but it worked. The only problem was that now I could not get the wiggle out. Victoria was in gear all the time. With jeans, slacks, or skirts, it did not matter. Catherine had not told me she was going to make it permanent. On the other hand, why not permanent? One wise guy at work let out a low wolf whistle after I passed his desk. I just ignored him. But Ashley and the other girls said I was walking much more naturally. Well, for a girl, that is. With this encouragement, I became even bolder. I showed up the following Tuesday wearing light makeup, just a pale rose lipstick, mascara, and blusher. Nothing major. Well, I did tweeze and fill in my brows a little, and added some very light shadow. Again, the other girls were approving of the changes. I noticed that the girls were not holding back in what they discussed in front of me anymore. I had been accepted into the inner circle. Men, sex, clothes, hair, makeup, periods, affairs. No subject was out of bounds anymore. They made me feel that I could talk about anything with them as well, which gave rise to some interesting questions and answers. Like when was I going to start coming in with a skirt and spikes on? I could not answer that one. Well, each journey was begun with but a single step. Ashley, I was afraid, had let the cat out of the bag where the other girls in the office were concerned. Of course, Madison had gotten wind of the whole thing as well. They had taken me under their wings. Where I had no one to hang out with, now I had several girl buddies. I liked having friends who understood me. They gave me all kinds of tips on hair and nail care and other girl stuff. I guessed you would say I had just become one of the girls. Several of them had asked me rather pointed questions about why I had been wearing women's clothing and acting like a girl. I had not really gotten into it very deeply with them. I just told them it felt right for me. I had now been wearing my flats with a bow on the vamp, as well as medium-height narrow heels, with my hose very obvious, for a couple of weeks. I was still wearing slacks, though now I had a couple more pairs in more traditional feminine styles and colors. I told them I was taking dancing lessons, and they thought it was great. Said it would come in handy. The men just avoided me or made snide remarks behind my back. For now, that was fine with me. They could not imagine why a male would want to desert the ship. Men had such an ego problem, you know. As if being male made you a superior animal. You desert a sinking ship, do you not? Especially a cruise you never really wanted to get on in the first place. I had to take a cut at my job, from junior accountant back to bookkeeper. But it was okay. That was part of the hammer falling, and it did not really surprise me. In fact, I was grateful that was all it was. Madison said I could work my way back. It was not really her choice. Her supervisor knew about me too, and it was he who demoted me. I guessed he was having a hard time handling this. I was only 2 years out of college. Plenty of time to rise to the top. Madison was in her early 40s and had been department head for almost 10 years. It was about 2 months after all this started that Catherine asked me if I wanted to learn any more about emeralds. I just could not resist saying yes, I cannot wait, with a little squeal, to find out what I was going to do next. The next thing I remembered was that I was in this lady doctor's office. I thought she was a gynecologist. My feet were up in stirrups on a table, and she gave me a really big shot in my backside. Not like the ones Catherine was giving me. Anyway, I did not have to wonder anymore when or how. I took a pill every day and a shot every week, and my lovely, sensitive breasts continued to blossom. Did I have a choice? Yes. Did I want to stop? No. Would I? Not likely. I was having too much fun. And for the first time in my life, I was not a loner. I was also growing like a weed in a couple of places, and now making no bones about how I dressed. I was living full-time as a girl, which was causing some whispers in my apartment building. Still with the slacks at work, though. And the underclothing I had been wearing to the office for fun and pleasure? Well, now it was required. Because when I began having to wear a bra, that was when Madison put her foot down. Hard. My enlarged, erect nipples showed through just everything. That was the week Madison came out of her office, rather than use the interoffice phone, and rather loudly said, "Victoria Hayes, come in here. We need to talk." I snapped to attention and walked in behind her, my heels clicking all the way. I started to shut the door. She said, "Leave it open. Are you living all the time the way you look here?" "No," I said. "No? No. When I am away from here, I wear a normal amount of makeup, skirts, dresses, spike heels. You know, the usual. In other words, you are living full-time as a woman? I guess there is no other way to put it." "Yes. And loving every minute of it." Madison asked, "Just how far do you plan to go with this, young lady? Just living, or all the way female?" "Probably all the way, Madison." I could not believe I was so calm as I spoke. See, I never really wanted to grow up male. In fact, when I was little, I thought I had a choice. Is that not silly? Well, hon, everyone has a choice, and I see you have finally made that choice. Then, from this moment onward, you are Victoria Hayes. Your desk nameplate will be changed tomorrow, and your next paycheck will be to Victoria Hayes. Do you have a bank account in that name? Yes, ma'am. Good. Then we will direct deposit as usual. Just call and give payroll the number and bank. All right. You are not the first, you know? You are kidding. Not at all. 3 years ago. She works in our Philadelphia office now. Well, I will be. Yes, I guess you will be our second. Although, with all the crap we have to go through and take from men, I do not understand why you want to put yourself in high heels. I hope we can all get past that and stay focused. I hope so too, Madison. You will meet the company dress code for female employees. This means you will keep the pantsuits to a minimum from now on and wear dresses, suits, skirts, and blouses, hose, and heels at all times. We also expect your hair, makeup, and accessories to be appropriate for the office. You will be expected to show proper respect and conduct yourself as a lady at all times. Clear? Yes, ma'am. There is nothing we can do about those slacks today, so at least when you leave my office, get yourself to the powder room and put on a normal amount of makeup. You look like a ghost. Ashley tells me you are very presentable in full bloom, so go show me. Thank you, Madison. You really have been very patient with me, escalating my femininity every couple of weeks. That is all right, Victoria. We understand. But make no mistake, you are now required to look your best as a woman in my department, regardless of what is between your legs. Understood? Absolutely. Your fellow employees will now refer to you as Victoria or Miss Hayes, depending on how well you know them or their comfort level with you. If you find someone giving you a hard time or refusing to follow this, which is company policy in these matters, you will give me their name and they will be dealt with. We have a policy of personal freedom and that everyone deserves respect. Is that clear? Yes, it is. Very. Now, you may want to sit down and write an email letter explaining your position for the internet, childhood hopes, and such. Ask for your fellow employees' cooperation, or we can send a standard letter. If you want input in this matter, go put down your thoughts and let me see it first. I may have some suggestions. We will send it out tomorrow. Victoria, good luck. I really mean that. Now go put some makeup on and get on that letter. According to what I understand, you will have to work this way for at least a year before you can have your operation anyway. I now reported for work every day in a skirt or dress, hose, heels, the works. The hair, nails with a French manicure airbrushed on at a salon, makeup, hoop, or dangle earrings. Everything done the best I could. Marcus did not work there anymore. Victoria did. In fact, the part of me that was Marcus was basically dead. No complications now. I liked it this way. Ashley had taught me how to set and style and braid my hair. All the records had been changed. And since I was having to work as a girl, my gynecologist sent me to a shrink to help me deal with my transition into the world of women and get the letter I was going to need in a year. I felt so much more in tune with myself now. Darn crafty, that Ashley. She took me over to the license bureau and helped me get a new driver's license with my proper name. The picture was not even that bad. I understood the company attorney would help me get the other documents changed. And I thought meeting Catherine was a chance meeting. Chance, my rosy-toed foot. Ashley knew my habits and just where I would be. I walked right into the spider's web. I was so glad she caught me before I wasted my life. I guessed I really did have a real friend in her after all. My shrink said it was a shame I had to wait even this long to find myself, considering my desires since childhood. He was fascinated by the story of how it happened. He gave me a letter to carry in case of a problem, and another one geared toward helping me change the name on my college diploma. And when the time came, my birth certificate too, in case the attorney needed it. Marcus gave up his old apartment, and I moved into a singles complex. Well, actually, I gave up the apartment for him. Poor dear had to leave town suddenly to take care of his sick aunt. I never appreciated what girls have to put up with, like guys hitting on them all the time. And in high school, I could never understand why, every time you called a girl during the week, she had to stay home and do her nails or hair, or go to her aerobics class or something. Now I understood. Being a girl was a high maintenance business, but I did go to dances and church socials. I could manage my high heels just fine now, backwards and forwards. Well, I was not really dating until my real life test was over in a few months. But I was something of a flirt, much to my surprise. Even then, I was going to have to wait a while until I healed up. Madison was being really nice about arranging a little sick leave for me. Mom and Dad were a little shook when they met Victoria, but they said they still loved me and that I certainly looked much happier. I would not have enough money saved up by the time I was eligible, but Daddy said he would make up the difference. Was that not sweet? I just found that out last week. I was diagnosed with gender dysphoria, a treatable condition. Some dysfunctions were more fun than others, do you not agree? I had a roast in the oven and— What the— Brandon, stop it. I cannot go to work with a hickey there. Chill, I'm sorry. Where was I? I guessed it was a good idea not to be too hasty about deciding about men, after all. The kissing and petting part sure was fun. I could see losing my virginity was going to be quite an event, and a lot more fun than I had planned.